It's two brothers teaching truth, fighting false doctrine and priestcraft in the last days, and it's two brothers. It's just two brothers.
Welcome to the Two Brothers. All right. Well, this is going to be an interesting one, a fun one. We really didn't expect to be talking more about this, but the way things have panned out, it's got too interesting for us to ignore, I suppose. So we figured we're gonna cover some of these things tonight. Our last video, you may have seen, and we obviously didn't mention it in the video because, funnily enough, hopefully you saw it in the description and you might have seen us comment about it. We actually recorded that last video the night before the church released their new statement about the vaccine. And what's interesting is that the whole video would appear to be a response to their statement about the vaccine, but it hadn't come out yet. So very interesting timing. What's really cool about that is that Ammon actually woke up sort of 6 weeks ago and started thinking, we really need to talk about this, and started jotting down a whole bunch of notes. And then we said, and we were like, okay, we really need to do this if you felt like we need to talk about this. But we didn't record it straight away. We just had no time. We're on holidays, doing bits and pieces, and the way it turned out I think it was like a Friday night or something, and the next morning was the announcement. It's just crazy how it turned out. So everyone's sort of been thinking this was our response to that statement, and really, we had no idea. So we were just focusing on people following the prophet.
I just think it's really interesting because everyone, if you look back at the last video, you look back through the comments, everyone's comments are, so what you're saying about the vaccine is, so what you're saying about us taking the vaccine is, do we take it or do we not take it, or what you're saying about we didn't mention the vaccine once in the video.
I think we did mention it as an example of something, but we didn't, it wasn't a thing to talk about because it wasn't
Well, we didn't mention the statement regarding the vaccine in the video.
Because it didn't exist, yeah.
Because we literally filmed it the night before, and the reason the video was released after the statement came out is because it took some time to edit the video and cut things out and put it together and
upload it.
It takes like 5 hours to do that, and then it takes another 5 hours to upload it for our horrible Australian internet upload speed. So after we'd done all that, it came out after the statement, so everyone just assumed that. But what I think is really interesting is if you look at, now knowing that, if you look back at that video and you go, what is your perspective now knowing that we've prepared that 6 weeks ago and we filmed it actually the day before the statement came out? How does that then change your perspective on what we actually spoke about? Because I can guarantee you that if everybody watched that video, if we were to have uploaded that a week earlier, everybody would have watched that video and gone, awesome. Yeah, follow the prophet.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole premise of the video was, don't cut the thread that binds you to the love of God and Heavenly Father through the line of His prophet. Don't cut the thread that binds you to the prophet of God and therefore to God. Everyone would have been like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Of course I believe that. Yeah. We all believe that because no one was being tested at the time that would have come out. And then a week later.
And now everyone thinks we're saying, don't cut yourself from the
vaccine, or something.
Thing
is, everyone's now watched that video and then come up with their own interpretation as to what we're getting at with the vaccine.
And we had nothing to do with any of this. Anyway. It's just crazy how it's worked out.
So the reason for this video is then to say, not only from our perspective, but also a little bit more specifically about the vaccine, because now we've had the statement.
Yeah.
Now we can actually make some kind of a comment on it.
We figured we should actually give our thoughts on it a little.
Yeah. So
this is probably going to be, one of our shorter videos, hopefully, maybe, I don't know, and a little less structured than some. We have got a bit of structure we just threw together, but it's going to be a little less structured. So first thing we want to say is, and we understand, okay? We are seeing the craziness that's coming about because of this statement. The church, all of the members of the church have an opinion and are very vocal about their opinion, and we understand. And we'll get to that in a minute, why we understand. But we're very aware of everyone's feelings. We understand how serious and important this is to everyone. It's people's lives. People feel, anyway, that their lives are at stake. And, you never know. With the vaccines, who knows? And people also feel their salvation is at stake. Do you know what I mean? There's all these things on the line in people's minds. And so we're very aware of that fact. We understand and we feel you, and we're trying to come from a total place of humility and empathy. We know how you feel. And we also want to reiterate that we should all try and show love to each other, because obviously there's a lot of contention going around. We were getting it in the comments on our video. Every social media group is just back and forth.
A dumpster fire.
It's an absolute dumpster fire.
Basically, we hope that we can have a dialogue where we can talk about these things to sort of work them out together without people getting offended or upset about them. And so what we really wanted you to know is, number one, we love all of you.
Yeah.
We hope that you love us. No matter what our position is on this, we're not judging you for your position.
Yeah.
We hope that you won't judge others for their position. We hope that you would never make somebody feel lesser than you for making a decision that you wouldn't make or that you wouldn't choose. And we're going to do our best to not do the same thing.
We're going to give you our best understanding of this whole thing, and hope you can understand our position.
One thing that we want to separate from that discussion, though, is that we're also not afraid, though, to talk about truth. So if we share things from prophets and apostles, or we say our understanding of something is such and such, we're also not afraid to say that, because who would we be if we shirked our responsibility to share truth as well?
Yeah.
So no judgments for anybody else. We love everyone, but we're also going to stand up for what we believe is right, and we hope that you can feel that from us as well. We're only here out of a place of love and care for everybody.
Joseph Smith said, how could he lie or not tell the truth to people? It would be an absolute disservice to everyone. He's a prophet, right? And we're not prophets, but we're going to talk about truth in our best understanding of. Now, another thing we want to talk about quickly is that with statements like this and things, yes, there are always exceptions, okay, firstly. Even in our personal lives with friends that we know and things, we know people who are either sick, they have already had vaccine injuries, or have children with vaccine injuries, and our heart breaks for them, and we understand how hard this must be for those people. It must be brutal, because we don't have that problem personally, and it's already a hard thing to deal with, a hard decision to make, and people who have that sort of problem, it must be really, really hard.
So for anyone who's not looking to be an exception, which we would encourage that whenever a prophet speaks, that's the first thing you're not trying to do, is to seek your exception from it. First thing you're trying to do is to say, how do I do my best to be obedient to whatever the prophet is saying? So yes, there are exceptions, but if you're not one of those exceptions, that discussion then sits at the door, and we move on from there. So let's talk about our own personal situations. This is really important, because people who watch us talk about these sort of things and watch the last video probably just assumed, oh, you guys are always pro-vaccine. You must be pro-vaccine because you're talking about following the prophet to death, and you're talking about doing whatever you're told, and people might even think that we're blindly obedient and this, that, and the other. Here's our personal situation. 35 years old, I'm a healthy guy. I've got nothing to worry about as far as COVID is concerned.
Yeah.
I'm not scared of COVID. You scared of COVID?
No, not at all.
We live in a state in Australia where there is 0 COVID cases. 0.
We're very blessed.
Tell me another place on the planet right now that has 0 cases.
I'm sure there are some, but
there might. Well, can you come up?
Some weird place in Sweden,
in Madagascar.
Yeah,
they probably have COVID too. But does anybody out there listening to this live in a place that doesn't have COVID? Doubt it. We live in a place that doesn't have it, so we don't have it at the moment. Touch wood. We have 0 restrictions related to COVID-19. We have no cases of COVID.
And COVID has a survivability rate of 99 point whatever percent.
A very high survivability rate. So you add all these things together, and actually what I should also say is we're also
we're conspiracy theory minded.
I think the thing is, the COVID vaccines are experimental. The COVID vaccines have not passed the tests that other vaccines have been required to pass, and some of them aren't FDA approved or aren't under some health regulations requirements fully approved.
I think they're FDA approved under emergency situations, yeah.
Both of my kids had the measles vaccine, and both of them got the measles from the vaccine.
Yeah.
And both of them were like at death's door from taking the vaccine. So although I don't have children that have died from taking a vaccine or have been permanently disabled from having vaccines,
You can see the risk of it.
I've seen firsthand from my own 2 children from taking a vaccine and actually getting the illness from the vaccine. So there's no conspiracy there for me. I know that vaccines can injure people. I'm not in any uncertainty as to that can be the case.
Yep.
So if you look at, just talking about me for a second, you look at my situation, healthy, I have nothing to worry about as far as COVID goes, at least not right now.
Yeah.
The vaccines are experimental and they're not fully approved. Our own state of mind, like you were saying, is to question things first, and until you're completely convinced of it, then at some point potentially adopt it.
Now, usually not when it comes to what the prophet says, but if we look back at the previous statement where it was very, every member should pray about it and do your own sort of...
I'm getting to that point. So my point is, nothing in my personal life, nothing in my personal situation says you are at immediate danger of COVID.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not in any immediate danger.
No.
I'm at as much danger of getting COVID as I am of rabies.
Yeah.
There isn't any here.
Yeah.
And COVID, there isn't any. And tomorrow, if there was rabies here, then maybe I would start thinking about the rabies shot. But there ain't any.
Yeah.
You know? So there's nothing in my health, in my history, on the horizon, the near horizon. There's nothing that tells me that this is a concern for me. I should get the vaccine. Everything, in fact, is telling me the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. Now, I also sit on the right, you do too, we sit on the right side of politics. And on the right side of politics, we're also very very sort of, at the moment, a little bit confused about what's going on with governments around the world. We're a little bit confused about what's going on with pharmaceutical companies around the world. We're in this state where we're not really trusting of anything.
Yeah.
And then the prophet comes out and says to me, I urge you, Ammon, to take the vaccine, because unless we can immunize everyone, we don't really have a hope in properly fighting this thing. As soon as that came out, you can see it is against everything that I've personally stood for. So this is actually a thing for me. I need you to understand. I haven't had the vaccine. I haven't rushed out and got it 6 months ago.
We still haven't got it because, I don't even know if they can give it to us yet.
But as soon as the prophet spoke and said, I urge you to go get the vaccine, I said to myself, the prophet's spoken. End of story. I will now go get the vaccine. And as soon as I said that to myself, and I really want to make this clear, as soon as I put aside my own personal desires, my own personal concerns, could I be injured? Could my children be injured? Could I get COVID anyway? Is it really going to stop COVID? This COVID thing is a sham. These restrictions are a sham. If I put all that aside for a second and just go, you know what? I am willing to follow the prophet, even though I do not have any hope in understanding this.
Regardless of anything else.
Regardless of anything else. If I just say to myself, I'm willing to follow the prophet on this one, the second I said that to myself, I felt the Spirit with peace and calm and comfort wash over me to the point where I knew in my mind and in my heart that it was the right thing to do.
There's something so satisfying and strengthening and confidence-giving about doing that, about laying that on the prophet's counsel and going, I will just do whatever it is. The way I sort of, said it to you before, for me this would mean something. If Joseph Smith said to me, hey, if he was here at the moment and said, hey, I urge you all to get the vaccine, I feel like, yeah, hell yeah, I would do it. Heck yeah.
Heck yeah.
And it's like, well, how should that be any different? Do you know what I mean? But exactly as you're saying, once, and for me, I'll admit, it took, even with this new statement, when I first read it, I was like, oh, it seems pretty much like the last one. Maybe a little more serious, but once I sort of getting some context around the whole thing and seeing other people's opinions on it and some quotes from prophets and things and getting some more understanding, I was like, you know what, actually this is, much more serious than a light request.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? This does mean something. And how many times does President Nelson have to hit the nail on the head
before we start to trust that he's a prophet.
Like the guy has just, I mean, wow. What do I have to say? So that's what we're trying to make you understand. Firstly, is that we are dead. I'm still dead against vaccinations.
Yeah, I'm still against the COVID vaccination.
Yeah,
and I'm ready to line up and take it.
I'm still going to get it. Now, again, disclaimer: we haven't got it yet because
circumstances don't really permit it. You can't where we are. You actually can't just go to a clinic and get it.
Yeah. But our will now is aligned with what the prophet said, and that's the main thing. So we feel really, really good about that. Now, we're saying this again, not as we're better than anyone, okay? Yeah. We only want you to understand our position and how we came to this conclusion.
We were as affected by this.
It was so hard. It's such a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah.
Do you know how hard it is to flip your whole mindset around? I've done this multiple times in the past year.
Yeah.
I've had pretty hard set ideas and notions in my mind, and I have had to break them and flip them literally 180, and that is really hard.
And how often are we're sending around videos and stuff on COVID vaccines and like things that the Pfizer CEO has apparently said about vaccines? I mean, like I say,
we really are mindful of conspiracy theory stuff, right? Like things that we don't make sense or we don't trust. We're all over that, and so that makes it even harder.
So the prophet says that sometimes the things that prophets are going to tell you are going to get in the way of your social life, and they're going to get in the way of your political ideas and all that sort of stuff. Social life, we have friends and family and stuff sending us stuff on COVID vaccines every single day of the week. 10 times a day, every single day of the week from multiple friends and family members. So it's not like it's only us and our own things that we understand. Yeah. It's like our entire social groups and friends and family are also sending this stuff around, and they're also looking to us to go, wait, are you going to get the vaccine now?
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you this, before this statement, I was a hard no still.
Yeah.
I won't do it because
Me too.
In my estimation, it's not important. It does seem like
I was willing to get COVID, and so were you.
Yeah, I would get COVID before I bother with the vaccination. That was my opinion. Maybe that's hard-headed and stubborn, and who cares, whatever. But before that statement, I was definitely not ever going to get the COVID vaccination. I didn't care what happened. I was not going to get it. I hate vaccinations of all sorts in general, and still do. But this, it did change our perspective, and it was hard. It was hard to do. So that's where we're coming from, and we want to again say, in all humility, we're not judging anyone for coming to any different conclusion. We're only trying to give you what happened with us in our opinion. Yeah.
So there's at least 5 different types of these vaccinations.
Yeah.
One of them was an experimental one out of China, and everyone kept sharing the videos of this experimental one. And this guy got the experimental one from China. And a couple days later, he started to talk like the Chinese, and he couldn't 明白佢講乜嘢，好奇怪，佢唔知佢講啲好多嘢，佢唔明白其實。
Yeah. Sorry.
So there's all these vaccines, right? There's the Moderna and the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca, and the AstraZeneca is the one that's available in Australia. And in Australia, that's been giving people blood clots.
Yeah.
And the health organisations here have been going, don't take it for these people this age. Do take it for these people. Hang on, we're not going to release it. It's not approved. We're not going to do this. I don't care about any of that anymore. I would even take, even though that was fake, I would even take the Chinese experimental vaccine if the prophet wanted me to do it.
Yeah.
Because I believe that he's never going to ask us to do things that are not going to be for our ultimate benefit. Now, could the vaccine affect me negatively?
Yes.
Yes. Am I concerned about it? No. Why? Because if the prophet tells me to do something, then I'm doing what's right in the eyes of God. And if at the end of the day, I suffer for that somehow, and if at the end of the day, any saints throughout all time have suffered for God,
and in fact they do,
then they haven't suffered in vain. Mm-hmm. And I would count myself among them. Now, I don't mean to say that, I hope I can be a martyr for the gospel.
No.
All I'm saying is I'm willing to follow the prophet at all peril. And I hear people saying, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm just not going to follow the prophet on this. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you rather just follow the prophet on it and then if you got it wrong, and you then you died. At least you could say you died following the prophet.
Yeah.
But it says urge. It doesn't say that it's. It doesn't say that it's like he didn't. Now, Chris, he didn't say, "Thus saith the Lord." We did debunk that sort of theory in our last.
We're going to talk a lot
video.
about all these sorts of things as well, anyway. So, let's keep cranking. So we got a lot to get through. So, Elder Neil L. Anderson, in his talk, "The Prophet of God," from General Conference in April 2018, said, "Don't be surprised if at times your personal views are not initially in harmony with the teachings of the Lord's prophet. These are moments of learning, of humility, when we go to our knees in prayer. We walk forward in faith, trusting in God, knowing that with time we will receive more spiritual clarity from our Heavenly Father." One prophet described the incomparable gift of the Saviour as the will of the Son being swallowed up in the will of the Father. The surrender of our will to God's will is, in fact, not surrender at all, but the beginning of a glorious victory. Some will try to overly dissect the prophet's words, struggling to determine what is his prophetic voice and what is his personal opinion. Boy, is that not happening right now. People are dissecting the statement word by word, trying to understand, is urge a serious enough, when the prophet urges us to do something, is that serious enough or not? Is that serious? Does he know what he's saying?
If you're one of those people that thought it was a good idea to take that statement and start taking out words like urge and looking them up in the dictionary to try and find out how serious this is, you've done it wrong. You've done it wrong. You could be an exception to the rule. You could have a medical history that excludes you. You could have a genuine medical concern. But the moment you start trying to find an exception for you.
Yeah, I mean,
that's where
you should be starting on, okay, I'm going to follow the prophet, not I don't want to follow the prophet and trying to find a way out of it.
In every instance, it should be, I'm going to follow the prophet. Let's just make sure that this all makes sense for me medically and everything, but my plan is to follow the prophet. So unless I'm medically excluded somehow, let's do it. And if I'm supposed to wear a mask at church because the prophet encouraged it, well, I'm going to get my mask on. Unless, of course, there is some kind of medical reason like asthma or something that you can't wear a mask. I'm going to socially distance. Unless, of course, it's not possible for me to socially distance, and then I'll do my best with the mask.
I've heard people put it, it's kind of funny and pretty well said that, why would you pray whether you should follow the prophet? Do you know what I mean? Of course you should.
Yeah, disregard.
People are like, I'm going to pray about it, and should I do what he says?
Yeah.
Wouldn't the answer automatically be yes? I mean, there will be the occasion where it may not be, but like...
Well, we answered this in a 4.5-hour video we did on personal revelation. When you're receiving personal revelation, which is the purpose of praying, so when you say pray, what you're trying to do is receive personal revelation for you. The Lord is not going to reveal through his Spirit any kind of revelation that is in contrast to what he reveals to his prophets. Surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he revealeth his secrets unto the prophets. And so whatever he's telling his prophets, you can bet your bottom dollar he's not going to be giving you some kind of adverse information to that. Again, stop trying to be the exception to every rule. So anyone that listens to this video and they're not the people that are the exception, that are trying to find a way to become the exception, are going to take that statement very hard.
Yeah.
Because
we're not trying to be harsh, but we're just trying to be truthful.
We're literally just using don't be surprised if at times your personal views are not in initial harmony with the teachings of the Lord's prophet.
Well, what we should be trying to do is swallow our will up in the will of the Father.
And that's perfect. So how did Jesus Christ give up his will to the will of the Father? When he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he said, if it be possible, take this cup from me, but not my will, but thy will be done.
Yeah.
And I partook and finished my preparations unto the children of men. So even though he didn't want to go through the pain and the heartache and take upon himself all of our sins and pains and illnesses and all that sort of stuff, because he knows how we're feeling at this time and through COVID-19, he did it anyway. And if he's the example, are we not supposed to be trying to allow ourselves to give up our will to the Father as well?
Isn't that the whole... I mean, that's basically the whole thing here is us surrendering to the Spirit letting the Spirit be our guide and surrendering our will to Heavenly Father's will. He breaks us down so he can build us up stronger. And, like we've used the analogy before, the gold refining, being reformed into what he needs us to be,
Yeah. And we're not trying to be hypocrites either. This hurts us.
Oh, mate, this is hard for us to deal with.
We are going to follow.
We're going to follow.
So we're not trying to be hypocrites here. This is hard, and we're telling you, even though it's hard for us, we're still planning on doing it. Yeah. So this is something very interesting. Here's a section taken from the Come Follow Me lesson for D&C, section 89, which is the one for this week, I believe.
Last week, I think.
Or last week.
Okay, I don't know, yeah.
When the elders in the school of the prophets first heard Joseph Smith read the word of wisdom, they immediately tossed their pipes and plugs of chewing tobacco into the fire. That's out of Saints, chapter 1, section 168. At the time, the word of wisdom was considered more of a caution than a commandment, but they wanted to show their willingness to obey. Perhaps you have already tossed from your life the substances of the word of wisdom warns against, but what else can you learn from this revelation? This has been on my mind since this was on the mind of a friend of ours who was reading through the lesson and thinking about the prophet's counsel. But section 89, the word of wisdom, we receive a word of wisdom from the Lord on not drinking and smoking and doing all that sort of stuff. This is exactly the same scenario. When the brethren first heard that, they're like, Joseph Smith's like, oh, guys, we shouldn't be using tobacco. And they literally popped the pipes out of their mouths that they were smoking and threw them away.
And you know what's funny is back then it was just a caution. Now the church policy has changed and it's been given to us as a commandment.
Yeah.
Right? We have to live it to go to the temple and, to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a harder time now probably living it than they were the faith they showed back then. We're probably worse now. And we're always trying to weasel our way through it. What's allowed and what's not.
What is the wording here?
Hot drinks.
Yeah. Define it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like herbs for the use of man.
Tobacco.
Like this.
What if we're rubbing it on?
And we're guilty of it too. Don't get me wrong. We're guilty of these things, but we're always, I don't know why, it's built into us, I guess, but we're always trying to find loopholes, right, in the Lord's revelations, which we shouldn't be doing. We should be saying, how can I live this?
How can I live it better? And there are ways, I think, for the majority of us to live the word of wisdom better. And we should be seeking to try and do that, try and live it better. So fruits and everything in the season thereof, and eating meat sparingly and all that.
We're all terrible at living the word of wisdom.
We can do better. We can do better. Sure. But in order to receive the blessings of that counsel, you've got to actually try and follow the counsel to the best of your ability. You know what I mean? And so when we get urged by the prophet to keep these COVID instructions, these COVID regulations, and get the vaccine, what's the difference between that and the word of wisdom?
Are you throwing your pipe in the fire, or are you trying to cling on to it? And
So when you heard this, did you throw your pipe in the fire immediately? No. Maybe we need to we've thought about that seriously, and
again, it was really hard.
Yeah, we're taking that pipe out and we're throwing it in the fire. We're just waiting for the opportunity to get the vaccine. But what's your position on that? How do you see that as similar? I'd be curious to know.
Yeah. Well, you want to talk about this bit? This bit?
Yeah, nah. Okay, so we're going through. So all this stuff is going on right now. What is the deal with all of these things getting thrown out by the church and the members having to adhere and find their central path to the teachings of the church? We didn't mention it in our last paper, but we wrote it into the paper, and we tossed and turned as to whether or not we were going to read it out. But it was the quote from Heber C. Kimball talking about a test.
Yeah.
Basically, we are now at the point in the church timeline of these latter days where we're undergoing a test as prophesied by Heber C. Kimball, and there are many channels on YouTube that keep referring to this test. Basically, what we're undergoing is a sifting period where the saints are being sifted. We're being sifted on the left, and we're being sifted on the right here. We're on the right, we're being sifted on the right. as far as like government, there was a mention in that first presidency message about government, vaccine. I don't trust any of that stuff, right? So I'm being sifted on the right.
And we've seen a lot of that on the left previously with, definition of marriage. We talked about this in our last video. All these things that have really sort of sifted out people who have issues with these
probably
things.
more left-leaning views.
Yeah.
And now we're sort of sifting on the right. So how does a sieve work? Micah from the 2LDS archives, I love the way that he described this, and I think it's perfect. When you're using a sieve, you're going left and right, left and right, left and right. We're knocking off some from the left, we're knocking off some from the right, because at the end of the day, if we're trying to build Zion, the place where the members of the church who are involved in Zion are of one heart and one mind and in unity, there can't be a right and there can't be a left.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to sift them. There has to be the
middles.
test.
Yep.
You want them creamy, delicious middles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Soft.
I mean, like too hot or cold, and the Lord will spew you out of his mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to be dead center on this. And there is only one truth. There is not your truth and my truth. There is one truth. And we're being sifted on both sides in the church until we all sort of reach that truth. And this, I am 100% sure, is part of that test.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing is, I don't know, we knew a test was coming, right? We've said this a bunch of times. Hinge point. A test.
Yeah,
test,
if you've seen our videos, we've mentioned this several times. Yeah.
Who would have thought it would have been?
I thought it was going to be something
big
else.
or else. I mean, and not to say that this is the only thing. This is probably just one of many things, but it sure seems like this is really kicking off something big. So, anyway, so I was talking to a friend the other day who's having a hard time dealing with this, and it really occurred to me that in our generation or our lifetime, or even I would say in nearly 200 years, I don't know that there's been anything that has really tested the saints' testimony of the prophet. Has anyone really had a reason in the past, say, 200 years is free balling it, but
Let's say 50.
yeah, but even then, right? So our lifetime and our generation, or double that, there's been nothing, no reason for anyone to question the prophet, right? He's really given us this strong wording, but not this specific "thus saith the Lord" or really specific declaration, where it's up to the members to go, hang on a minute, do I actually believe he's a prophet? Do I actually want to follow the prophet? It occurred to me the other day, and I just think, wow, this is really a test for us about following the prophet. I feel like Joseph Smith's time definitely would have had that, you know what I mean? They would have definitely had their faith proven about Joseph Smith many times, and probably some prophets after him. And you know what? I could be dead wrong. There probably is times that have happened a lot where people is having their faith tested about the prophet. But I feel like right now for us, I've never had a reason to go, I don't think he's a prophet.
Okay, so in a roundabout way, what you're saying is there's no time that we've experienced personally, and maybe in the past couple of generations, where there's been a test where we haven't been given the answers.
I suppose, but it's just nothing that's ever pushed our faith.
Because the way that this was worded in a way where he didn't specifically mention Jesus Christ. A bunch of people have criticized it by saying, didn't mention the word Jesus Christ, didn't actually put a signature on it, just put their names on it. Like, people are coming up with a lot of reasons.
Dissecting it.
They're coming with a lot of reasons to dissect this. So it was obviously stated in a way where it's very clear, but it's not forceful.
Not forceful.
And so people are going, well, because this is not forceful, it means that I need to rely on my own judgment here. Now, that is correct. However,
to a point,
as we mentioned earlier, the Lord is not going to give revelation to a prophet to do something and then go and hand you something that contradicts the prophet's revelation. It's just not going to happen. I'm saying that as a principle. I'm not saying that about the vaccine. I'm not saying about this statement. I'm saying as a principle, Moses doesn't say we're going into this land to go and fight these giants and take Canaan. And then one of
Bob, because it's a sore knee.
No. And then Bob stands up and goes, well, I just felt the Spirit tell me that we shouldn't go into Canaan.
Yeah.
It literally cannot happen. That is something that contradicts the laws of heaven. If the prophet receives revelation for us, our revelation is not going to be contradict that. And I know what people are going to say. There's room in this for your own decision making. And again, we've been through that. If you're an exception to this, stop worrying about it. Because you will say to yourself, if I wasn't the exception, I would follow the Lord, and you will still receive the blessings of obedience regardless.
Yeah, there are clear, if there's a clear exception to it, again, if we're talking severe medical things, you can't have a vaccination and things like that, you're exempt. I mean, you don't have to worry, but for the most part.
Let's move on. People have been talking about the brazen serpent. Now, we mentioned it in our last video, but again, we hadn't heard...
Again, it was before
we hadn't heard any of this stuff.
It's just an example
we were
used.
talking about how people looked to the brazen serpent as a way of following the prophet, because the prophet lifted the brazen serpent.
Yeah.
So they were following the prophet by going, we'll listen to the prophet because if we look at it, we will live.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
Nothing to do with the vaccine for us.
Now, the brazen serpent represented Jesus Christ. There's a lot of people on YouTube and around the internet going, the brazen serpent example is not a suitable example because the brazen serpent actually represents Jesus Christ. So are you telling me that the vaccine, looking to the vaccine, is somehow a representation of Jesus Christ? Are you kidding me? Are you seriously comparing the vaccine to the brazen serpent? And the answer is no. No one's comparing the brazen serpent to the vaccine. And to try and twist it and say that they're saying that is very disingenuous. What they're saying is, a prophet will lead and guide you. Here is the way. Here is a vaccine that you have prayed about and we have fasted for, and the vaccine has come in record time, and here it is. Now, I still don't trust it.
I know.
And those Israelites didn't trust the brazen serpent. Otherwise, they would have looked.
Enough to not look,
Otherwise, they would have looked.
Yeah.
But the prophet goes, here is a vaccine. We're not saying that the vaccine is Jesus Christ. All we're saying is, those that follow the prophet as he's saying, here it is, follow my counsel, are going to receive the blessings of obedience. That's the only comparison people are making with the brazen serpent.
Yeah, it's not about looking at the serpent. It's about the act of obedience. That's it.
It's really, really simple. Now, here's a really cool quote from our mate, Zion's Boomer. And we really love this, and it talks about this a bit further. Maybe you want to...
I'll read it. So, the Israelites, after many years, started to consider the serpent itself as holy, instead of the act of obedience in looking as commanded. Now, yes, the item was sacred and deserved care and respect and honor and appropriate dignity, but it was the power of God that blessed them, not the object. And this is him saying this, in my line of work, which is 100% new and remodeled temples, I regularly replace altars and other sacred parts of the temple when they are worn out and no longer able to be repaired. Once the new altars are made and finished, we take the old ones outside near the dumpster and we destroy them with saws and with sledgehammers. This is done to ensure no one takes it home as a relic, and so it is unrecognizable to others. Very similar to destroying garments once they are no longer in wearable condition. The new altars are not dedicated in any way because the temple as a whole is dedicated. It is the holy priesthood and the Holy Spirit of promise which blesses our lives. When we come to the temple as an act of submission to kneel at the altars petitioning the Lord for his blessings. It is the act of obedience, the worthiness of the patrons, and the faithfulness in keeping the covenants which is holy, not the upholstery, not the wood, not the paint or gold trim. And in a similar way, the vaccine is not holy. It's certainly less effective and probably useless, but our obedience in submitting ourselves to the prophet's direction is what is holy. Man, that's beautiful, eh? So we had to chuck that in. It's just so nice. It was such a great analogy.
It's an amazing comparison.
Yeah.
It's not the font that's holy. It's not the gold trim. It's not the fancy thing inside the temple that makes it holy. We're being told by our prophet, our wonderful prophet, we're being told by him to make our homes holy. It's not my wall. It's not the cool light that we've got that makes this place holy. It's the spirit that we bring into it. So just the same as that example from the temple, the vaccine ain't holy, guys. The prophet's not saying the vaccine's here to save the world.
And we still don't have faith in the vaccine as a vaccine. I don't even...
Yeah.
It's not the point.
Yep. It's the blessings of obedience by following the prophet that is the point. The vaccine could kill you. I don't know what the vaccine is going to do. But the blessings received by following the prophet are not going to be lost on us. Yep. They're amazing.
And it feels good.
Now, what we've noticed in social media, boy, social media's been a dumpster fire. Mm-hmm. We have seen the snakes come out of hibernation in social media.
You would have seen it.
I was in social media talking about this, and I noticed a friend of mine who I talk to about the gospel from time to time, who never posts in social media pages about church-related topics, and all of a sudden he was in this page talking about the vaccine and trying to lead members away. And I personally know, number one, he's not a member of the church, or he's a disenfranchised member of the church. He's very, very anti the church. Yep. And here he is posing as, he's talking about the church like he attends and like he believes in it, and he's simply trying to shake the faith of everyone by disagreeing with them and throwing out things to shake their faith on things. And so I was in there going, mate, you don't even go to church. You don't believe in any of this. So maybe just, oi, guys, watch what's going on here, because this is a little bit dangerous. Now, we are friends, so there's no harm, no foul there, but I did try and wake up a couple of these guys and go, if you're going to get involved in social media, just understand there's a lot of snakes out of the grass at the moment, and they're out there to try and shake your faith. They're out there to try. A lot of them aren't trying to do the wrong thing, but they're out there. They're out there as doubters, trying to rehearse their doubt with other doubters. Yep. And the only thing that you get when doubters rehearse doubt with each other is more doubt. and they're not building up anything.
And doubters are looking for other doubters all the time. Anything that will strengthen their position, right? Any way they can find a loophole, anything that makes them feel better about not following the prophet, they're trying to look for that. They're finding it. They want that. So our thing is, we're seeing this, and we know you're probably all seeing this. Just be careful. You can't trust everything you see.
Don't trust anything that you see.
Don't trust anything.
Unless it comes from the church, unless it's from a prophet, apostle, scriptures. You've personally verified it. How many people, I could go on and on about this, and maybe I don't need to, but please be careful. Please don't.
We're going to cover some examples here in a second. Yeah. We've got another quote quickly. We just intersperse this with a bunch of good quotes. Some members feel that they are relying on the arm of the flesh if they get the vaccine, but President Dallin H. Oaks taught, the use of medical science is not at odds with our prayers of faith and our reliance on priesthood blessings. When a person requested a priesthood blessing, Brigham Young would ask, have you used any remedies? To those who said no, because we wish the elders to lay hands upon us and we have faith that we shall be healed, President Young replied, that is very inconsistent according to my faith. If we are sick and ask the Lord to heal us and to do all for us that is necessary to be done, according to my understanding of the gospel of salvation, I might as well ask the Lord to cause my wheat and corn to grow without my ploughing the ground and casting in the seed. It appears consistent to me to apply every remedy that comes within the range of my knowledge and then to ask my Father in heaven to sanctify that application to the healing of my body. And that was from his talk, Healing the Sick, in April 2010 General Conference.
I've seen people in social media come out and go, I believe in the healing power of the priesthood, insinuating, I will not take the vaccine and I will expect that the power of the priesthood heals me. Yep. If I got COVID-19.
I think a lot of people think that. It's pretty easy to think that. But this quote from Dallin H. Oaks and Brigham Young pretty much shows that we shouldn't just be automatically throwing everything into faith in the priesthood. Yes, the priesthood can heal us, but if you haven't taken the care, and especially when something comes to your knowledge, and especially when the prophet says, hey, I urge you to get this, if you think that you're going to get COVID later or whatever and then go, look, the priesthood will heal me, you haven't taken the first step.
If you wouldn't expect that your corn and wheat would grow without you getting out there and plowing and tilling the earth, you cannot expect that if the prophet tells you to get the vaccine and you choose not to get it, and then expect the priesthood power to heal you in the event that you get sick, that you're also seeing that from the same false perspective. Mm-hmm. It's a faulty perspective. Yeah, it's just broken. It doesn't work. And now, does it mean that the priesthood can't work in that instance? No. We are personally not saying that. We're just reading something that Dallin H. Oaks and Brigham Young taught. And so again, it's not our personal understanding is not that necessarily. This is the teachings of the prophets.
And I would think, honestly, it'd be very easy to be in that mindset. I have faith in the priesthood. That's all I need.
Yeah. But it's the same. It's the same thing as the guy who's sitting on his house, and there's a flood, and along comes a helicopter, and the guy says, "No, I'm waiting for the Lord to save me." And then along comes a guy with a boat, and he goes, "No, I'm waiting for the Lord to save me." And then the guy drowns, and when he goes to heaven, he goes, "Lord, why didn't you save me?" And he goes, "I sent you a helicopter and I sent you a boat. Why didn't you get on them?" And he's like, "Oh, dang it." It's the exact same principle. It's a clear, simple, primary principle. Like, if that's not clear, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Is it going?
Yep.
Tom Owen.
Tom Owen.
Our buddy Tom Owen.
That's
You've all probably heard of Tom Owen.
That's a name you've heard.
I'm sure everyone's heard of that name. So this is the example, one of the examples we're going to talk about. You would have seen this screenshot that's going around, or people are posting it on social media everywhere. I mean, everywhere. I've seen it in every
single thread talking about this First Presidency message.
And again,
Tom Owen's name gets thrown into the mix.
I bet he's hating this.
He might not even be real.
Yeah,
who knows?
Good old Tom Owen. And this is what we're talking about. Be careful, right? People, the doubters are. I mean, you don't know where this came from, right? And we're pretty much confirmed.
Explain what it is.
Okay, so you would have seen this going around. Tom Owen, who apparently is a guy who works for the church in like the HR department or church headquarters.
PR department.
Yeah, PR. They give a number that you can call. They say, "I just called this guy."
This is the 801-240-1000 number.
So this has been copied to like 1 billion social media threads. And every time it says, "I just got off the phone with Tom Owen," right? Like this person has just talked.
Or I know someone who knows someone that spoke to Tom Owen at the church headquarters.
Yeah.
And this is what he said.
Now, so this is what they say he says, that the letter came from the administrative, not the revelatory or prophetic side of the church.
That there are two sections to the church. One is administrative, and one is the spiritual side of the church.
You know, the prophet is the administrative and the spiritual leader of the church, right? He's the president of the church and the prophet of the church, right?
Yeah.
Where are people getting this from?
There's no separation.
So
as soon as we read this, we're like,
what is going on?
There's factual inconsistencies immediately. Like as soon as we read this, we're like, red flag, red flag, red flag.
Yeah. So then they go on talking about how they talk to the public affairs department of the church. Now here's where it gets dicey for us. Brother Owen further advised to admonish and rebuke any church official who pushes this message as revelation or the doctrine of the church to their members. Now this guy apparently works for the HR, the PR department of the church, and in his opinion, church leaders who share this should be admonished and rebuked. Tom Owen, mate.
Yeah, where is Tom Owen's...
Tom Owen.
Now, I don't believe that this is real. So let me just say that
You might understand our sarcasm here. Yeah.
I don't believe this is real. But if somebody honestly believed that this was real, try and explain to me how Tom Owen, who is a keyless individual, who works for the church but is not in any position of authority, can say that anybody who is teaching this as doctrine needs to be rebuked or admonished.
Ammon's just going to give him a quick call right now.
I want to try and speak to Tom Owen. If everyone can call church headquarters and talk to Tom Owen, which that's exactly what this says. And
Tommy.
Everyone who talks about this goes, there's the number.
Yeah,
you can just call Tom Owen.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. This is the phone number for, you probably can't see it. This is the phone number for Tom Owen.
For your marketing campaign.
Oh, you can use this number for your marketing campaign. Weird.
Okay, so that's the three. Let me just make sure it's the correct one. Scroll up again. Okay, 801. Oh man, I'm gonna try and do this again.
So now it also. Oh, you need the number.
Yeah, I need to see it. 801-240
1000.
1000.
Now. Oh, well, let's see what happens.
I hope we can talk to Tom Owen.
It's nearly 10 a.m.
Thank you for calling the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. How may I direct your call?
Hi, we'd just like to talk to someone from the PR department about the church's recent statement. We're from Australia.
One moment, please.
Thank you.
Well, look at that.
We're doing it live, guys. And if we're wrong, we're wrong. But let's find out.
You have reached the Church Communication Department of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
If you are a media representative with a media or newsroom inquiry, please press 1. To reach a specific church communication department employee by name,
Tommy Owen.
press 2.
Tom Owen.
Wait while I transfer.
We have a name. So we're going...
Office's automated operator. To reach a specific person, just tell me their name. Or for a live operator, press 0.
Tom Owen.
Extension 0. Is that correct?
No.
Did you mean 0?
Yes. Let's just see where we go.
Come on, Tommy.
I think we're just going to get an operator.
Hello, church operator.
Hey, good morning. It's my name's Amit. I'm calling from Australia today. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. That's good. We've just been curious about. We've heard a name Tom Owen being thrown around quite a bit with regard to the church's recent instruction with regard to the vaccine and COVID guidelines. Is Tom Owen a real person?
One moment, please.
Oh, thank you. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I don't care how many Tom Owens we speak to. Maybe we'll actually get Tom Owen.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
You have reached the church communication department.
Why do they keep
of the
putting us in a
Church
loop?
of Jesus Christ
So far, my
of
confidence in
Latter-day
it isn't great that you'd actually get Tom Owen.
Saints. If you are a representative with a media or newsroom inquiry, please press 1. To reach
She
a
don't-
specific
she don't
church
wanna-
communication department employee by name, please press 2. And your call will be forwarded to the church office's automated operator.
I don't
We did two last time.
Let's go one.
About
We're media.
Hey,
while
hey,
I transfer your call.
it's easy. Just call the
Easy.
the 1000 number.
Just call Tom Owen
and
anytime I want.
You'll get Tommy Owen. So we're not taking this lightly. We just enjoy what we do.
Hello?
Hi, who's this? Sorry.
Hello?
Hello. My name is Ammon. Who's this?
You're really breaking up. I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Are you from the church PR department?
Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can. You're just really breaking. I can't hear what you're saying.
Okay. What's your name?
Hello? Can you call back? Maybe it will be better.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. Well, Tom
Tom
Owen.
Owen. Anyway.
No.
Tom Gill. Is that correct?
No.
Thomas Moore. Is that correct?
It's got to be 9. No. Got to be nearly
There
there.
are no more matches.
There's no Tom
Say
Owen.
cancel or press 0 to exit at any time.
Where's Tommy Owen?
There are 10 matching names. Tommy Owen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Transferring to
But it's not,
Tommy Owen.
it's not Tommy, though, is it? But
Sorry. Tommy Owen is not available. Record your message at the tone. When you are finished,
Okay.
hang up
All
or
right.
press pound
We will.
for more options.
All right. I got this. Hi. This is Ammon, and I'm calling from Australia, just a member down here, and I hope I'm speaking to the right person. So firstly, if I'm not speaking to the right person, my apologies. But there's been, and the name Tom Owen has been spread all over the internet, and it might be you, or it might be someone from the PR department there, but it's causing a lot of confusion, because in the statement that apparently came from Tom Owen, it says that Tom Owen tells the members
that there's an administrative and a revelatory division in the church. Is that true?
that they're separate, and that Tom Owen further admonishes and rebukes any church official who pushes the message from the First Presidency regarding the vaccine as revelation or doctrine to their church members, so that Tom Owen was going to personally rebuke them and admonish them. I just wanted to understand what position that Tom Owen is in. of authority that he could make a revelatory call like that.
And is this true? Is it true?
And is it true that it even happened? Because this doesn't seem real to me. So some of your mates over in Australia would love to know this. And if you could please call me back, my number is plus. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, bye.
Mate, Tommy Owen, he's got to get back to us for sure.
Tommy Owen, if he doesn't get back to me, I mean, he would love to get back to me.
So, okay, so look, so we don't have a lot of faith in this whole thing that's been going around, okay? It's been debunked, I'm pretty sure that it's
everyone's
been debunked.
everyone's debunking it, but it'd be fun to speak to Tom Owen and get it from the horse's mouth.
He may not even exist as a PR guy. So anyway, the last bit that really gets us about this we haven't actually mentioned is that he says this is guidance from government leaders, medical officials, and not God. All right? Per Salt Lake, the interpretation of these opinions and optional guidance, all these words they've chucked in there, optional guidance is to be left up to each member individually. Well, it's not what it says in the statement there, Tom Owen. Now...
And we're so sorry if this is a fake person or if this is a fake statement, because we would hate to be Tom Owen right now when everyone is appropriating this kind of stuff.
Poor guy.
To his name.
Yeah, because he may not have said this, or maybe he did. I don't know. The fact is that people are attributing this to a guy named Tom Owen at church headquarters. Now, what I want to say quickly about this is, so what he's saying is that the prophet and the first presidency are basically taking guidance from government leaders, medical officials, and not God.
Do we actually believe that?
Do you really think the president of the church cares more about what the government officials might say, what medical officials might say, or do you think he might actually do what God says?
We've went over this in our last video. There's nothing of importance to members of the church that him and the Council of the 12 and the First Presidency don't sit down and pray about specifically and go over in detail before they make a statement like this. And unanimously. We did go over that in our last video.
And again, so we don't want to come off smarmy here or whatever, or prideful or anything like this, right?
I don't know what smarmy means.
Well, you're going to learn, boy. It means prideful.
Prideful, okay.
Right, so we don't want to come across like that. But we're just having a bit of fun and a bit of a joke with it. But we really don't hold any stock in these things that are getting sent around. Watch out for wolves in sheep's clothing.
Once again, we're as affected by this as anyone. So we are laughing at our own situation here.
Look, when you see those things, I get it. You go, oh, good. It's not a prophetic call. It's from, he's not
It's
doing
administration,
It's
guys.
administrative. Oh, cool. I don't have to do anything. Of course that makes life easier. But there are, why, just ask yourself, why would these things be circulated around on the internet?
Anyway,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So, the conclusion we came to was there is no administrator or even note taker at Church HQ.
If anybody is going to call up these guys, there is a process that is in place, and there is actually a protocol for them to follow
there's a
with these
protocol.
types.
So let's read it.
Here's the protocol they're supposed to follow. This is from a letter written by the First Presidency. They wrote, "Dear brethren and sisters, members of the church continue to place telephone calls and write letters to church headquarters about doctrinal issues and personal matters." Oh, we just tried to do that. We're debunking. We don't actually care about their opinion. We just want to debunk some things that people are potentially have made up. By reason of their callings, local leaders are entitled to the spirit of discernment and inspiration to enable them to counsel members within their jurisdiction. Accordingly, correspondence from members will be referred back to their local leaders for handling. Stake presidents who have need for further clarification about doctrinal or procedural issues may write to the First Presidency in behalf of their members. It is our desire that all members will feel they have the support and guidance they need. However, all things should be done in wisdom and order. We believe that both members and local leaders will be blessed as they pray and counsel together in an effort to resolve matters of concern to them.
So when you have an issue, and this is, by the way, signed by the First Presidency, Thomas S. Monson, so it's a little while ago, Henry B. Eyring, Dieter F. Uchtdorf. So when a member has an issue, they don't need to be going and calling Tom Owen. It doesn't matter what Tom Owen thinks.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
The protocol is that if Tom Owen gets the phone call, Tom Owen refers them back to the local leaders who are entitled to the spirit of discernment.
Now, if that didn't happen, who's lying?
Then the protocol has not been followed.
Yeah.
So, is this a letter from the administrative? Well, if the COVID statement was from the administrative side, like Tommy Owen's letter says, then is this letter from the first president also administrative? And if it is, does that then nullify the administration requirement from Tom Owen?
What I don't get, right, you see the 3 signatures at the bottom of the statement. It's the presidency of the church. How can you call something they all put their names on administrative? Do you know what I mean? Like it's the presidency of the church, the prophet and his 2 counselors, the highest quorum in the church. You think they put their name on everything that is just any of whatever?
Of no concern whatsoever. Of no importance.
Now we have this. It's a first-hand account. Now, again, we're saying, be careful what you listen to on the internet. Be careful of, there are snakes, right? Wolves in sheep's clothing. Just be careful. Again, we're not going to be able to verify or debunk every single thing out there. There's a lot of stuff out there, and a lot of it's junk. But we do have a first-hand account. One from a friend we're not going to name, and then you might have seen the Garner Brothers, a new YouTube channel.
Really good. The Garner Brothers talking about doctrinal stuff.
They do these really cool little concise videos about good points, very similar things to what we cover. Really good little anecdotes and points they provide there. Now they also have part of this as their first-hand account. So I'm just going to read what this is a bit of a mishmash of the Garner brothers' experience and also this unnamed friend. This is a first-hand account. This happened to them. So this is very recent.
We haven't said a first-hand account of what it is.
I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
So this happened at Rainier, Oregon Stake, very recently. It was a leadership conference, and there was about 10 stakes in attendance. This happened in the Pacific Northwest, obviously. They met in the Vancouver, Washington Stake Center. So this was a leadership conference, right, which they have every, around stake conference time. You'll have a leadership conference. For some reason, they had 10 stakes together. I think it's because there's so many, they can't, and the apostles are getting old, so they can't all just split up all the time.
There's too many stakes, so they have
one of the two. So, he says, a good bit of time was spent on general questions pertaining to the people in our area, and that was the focus, and that's what generally happens at leadership conferences. One thing was crystal clear, though, and again, this is his opinion, but this is a first-hand account of this. One thing was crystal clear, though. This announcement from the first presidency, the one about the vaccination, is the mind and will of the Lord. Not even a shred of room for this is just the prophet's opinion. And he goes on to say why. Elder Rasband was the apostle there. He said, President Nelson asked, well, what has been the response online? He's telling them this. Elder Rasband said, are you sure you want to know? To which President Nelson replied, give it to me. Elder Rasband told him there are 3 types of responses. 1, people giving thanks for a living prophet. 2, people stating that the prophet is only giving his opinion and that we need to make our own decisions on the matter. And 3, people criticizing the prophet and deciding to leave the church over this issue. I mean, that number 3 could be, there's a lot of grey area there. 3, people criticizing, leaving the church. There's 2 different things there. But anyway, 3 groups. President Nelson then told Elder Rasband, well, so they persecuted the prophets which were before me. Now, this was said by Elder Rasband to a friend of ours and then backed up again by the Garner brothers on a YouTube channel because I think one of them
So basically what we're saying is we know at least 2 people who were in attendance in this meeting and who heard Elder Rasband say, with regard to this recent First Presidency message, that when he broke down the different ways that people are taking the message, the response from our prophet was, well, people have persecuted the prophets which were before him. Yeah. So what is he actually saying there? He's saying that he gave a prophetic statement, and the ones that are choosing not to follow it or disregard it or leave the church over it are treating him the same way that they rejected prophets in the past.
Yep.
That is a powerful statement. Mm-hmm. That is a powerful statement. Now, for anyone who doesn't believe us, and you shouldn't believe us, go and have a look at the Garner Brothers YouTube channel. They've mentioned it to a couple of people. I'm sure if you wanted to contact them or look at their videos, I'm sure they'll make mention of that in some of their upcoming videos. And there were 10 stakes in attendance. Mm-hmm. in the Pacific
A lot
Northwest.
a lot of people would
If
know
you
these
really,
people.
if you really wanted to know about it, you probably know someone or know someone that was in attendance. So if the church doesn't come out and give more specific details on this conference, which they probably won't, and you're curious to know about it for yourself, you probably could find out. But we're just saying that
What we're doing,
know
there's
this.
a lot of opinion that you cannot verify on the internet, and this is
verified
first-hand story that we have verified.
to us. We
Okay?
verified it.
Now, there's more. Not only did he say it was no coincidence that during a worldwide pandemic, the leader of the church happens to be a medical doctor, but after talking about this guidance being the mind and the will of the Lord, he shared 4 quotes to add context, one of which being from Ezra Taft Benson himself about how the most important prophet, so far as we are concerned, is the one living in our day and age. That's probably the 14... principles.
fundamentals
Yeah,
of following the prophet.
Right. Elder Razban was talking about the first presidency letter, and he told us that President Nelson reviewed it with them, meaning the 12 apostles, and the first presidency, and said, well, would you like to edit my comments? Elder Razban said that's pretty typical of President Nelson, and that sometimes he actually takes him up on it, but not this time. And then he bluntly told everyone, this statement is 100% Russell M. Nelson, period. Meaning there was no external entities, there was no doctors, there was no government officials getting in his ear.
It wasn't the administration side of the church telling him what to do and then him signing his name on
The
it.
12 apostles all unanimously agree with it. They didn't want to change it, they didn't want to edit it, and they were saying it's 100% Russell M. Nelson, period. It's him, right? The prophet doesn't bow to government leaders. He doesn't bow to medical professionals. He bows only to God. All right? And this is 100% a true account, a first-hand story, okay? And like we say, there's many places you could verify this. So what we're trying to say is don't listen to the garbage that people are just parroting around social media.
Just because someone says it to you doesn't make it true. Stick to, like we're doing through this whole thing, we're sticking to, even this story is a first-hand story told to us about what Elder Razban said. Prophets and apostles. We're just trying to stick to the prophets and apostles. And where we can, the living ones, because the living ones are more important to us than the dead ones. So Neil A. Maxwell said, but make no mistake about it, brothers and sisters, in the months and years ahead, events will require each member that he or she decide whether or not she will follow the first presidency. Members will find it more difficult to hold longer between 2 opinions. And as we mentioned before, at what point in our lives have we, up until this point, actually needed to decide whether or not we follow the first presidency?
Yeah, like I
we've
said-
always done it without having to think.
Yeah.
And then for the first time, for us, we get this statement and we go, okay, well, are we going to follow the first presidency? Are we going to follow the prophet? The answer is yes.
But yeah, what an interesting test to have.
Yep.
And it's never happened before, as far as I can tell, in our time. Elder Henry B. Eyring, in his talk Finding Safety in Council, said, looking for the path to safety in the council of prophets makes sense to those with strong faith. When a prophet speaks, those with little faith may think they hear only a wise man giving good advice. Then if his counsel seems comfortable and reasonable, squaring with what they want to do, they take it. If it does not, they consider it either faulty advice or they see their circumstances as justifying there being an exception to the counsel. Those without faith may think that they hear only men seeking to exert influence or for some selfish motive. Mm-hmm. Really interesting. The reason we wanted to mention this is because it's pretty pertinent, isn't it?
Well, it's literally the feedback that we're seeing from the members all over social media and all over the web is that there is a very large chunk of people who are trying to say that it's just faulty advice. My circumstances are different. I'm somehow the exception to the council. I don't believe in the vaccine.
That's the whole thing right
Yeah.
now. Is everyone is trying to find a way to be the exception to the council because no one
Well, we don't
wants
want
the
to say
vaccination.
everyone, but we want to say
Okay.
there is a group of people who are saying, as soon as they heard it, their first impression is it's faulty advice from someone that's just seeking power or it's just administrative, and how can I be the exception? Mm-hmm. That's what Henry B. Eyring is saying. It's the opposite of safety.
And we're not, yeah, exactly. And we're not saying that you all have little faith if that's your, stance on it. But
this is the trial of our faith.
This is the trial of our faith. This is the test, right?
Yeah.
This is, and as we said at the start, when you can actually put your faith in the prophet and just go, I'm just going to do what he says, It feels really good.
There is a peace and a comfort. There's no fear. There's no anger. There's no hatred. Like I literally just feel love about this whole thing, and I never thought that I would about this very specific subject because I've been so darn anti this whole thing, and now all I feel is peace and comfort where I see people around me showing anger and confusion and sadness. And I if there's one thing that we can say from this is we understand that this is part of the test. This is our time. This is our time to prove ourselves. This is our time to show that we will follow against what we think is our better judgment, against what we think is our better understanding, or the world's better understanding. And so when this sift is going on and it's taking a little bit off here and a little bit off there, and like the gold, we're being refined down to that pure ore, that pure gold, so that we're prepared and ready for the return to Zion. Being a Zion people for a Zion place, the New Jerusalem. That is what this is all about in order to welcome in the second coming of Jesus Christ and welcome to this earth its King.
Because do you know who goes to Zion? Who gets called to go to Zion, build up Zion and live there are those who follow the prophet.
Yep.
And it's as simple as that, right?
Don't cut the thread.
Don't cut that thread. And one of the last thoughts we have for you is, do you think or would you have the faith as the pioneers did to pull your wagon across country to a place you've never heard of or been in winter, knowing that you may or likely will die because the prophet said so?
Just because the prophet said so.
Because
you would leave. And this is important, I think, to share as well. There are some of you that might be listening that when you hear that comparison with leaving Nauvoo and going to Salt Lake, you might be one of the widowers, the ones that didn't have any food to take, and you knew that if you left, you would struggle much more than someone who had a well-equipped wagon with a family full of strong sons, who was ready to pull the wagon the whole way. All of our circumstances are different. We completely understand that. We have made very, very clear that our circumstances are that this was extremely difficult for us.
Yeah.
So maybe our wagon in this instance was very bare, and it takes even a greater leap of faith for us to go, you know what? Even though our wagon is bare, even though we're not sure that we can pull it all the way, even though we don't understand the reason to leave behind our home in Nauvoo, even though we don't understand the reason why we would risk our life, our very life, to cross the plains just because a prophet said to do it, we're going to do it. And we're going to do it because through following the prophet, you receive the blessings of obedience and blessings of following the prophet. We will be sifted. We will become like that gold. We will prepare to be a Zion people to receive the King.
Yeah. So lastly, who would have thought this would be one of the big tests of our time, whether or not to get a vaccination.
Didn't see it coming.
Yeah, crazy. And it was a test for us. And it's still hard to fathom and hard to deal with. Like we say, we live in a country that is, or a side of the country that is relatively untouched and normal. And we are still going to go through with it. When the time comes, when we can, we're going to do it because the prophet has said. You know what? I hope we get a little bit more guidance on this. General conference is coming up. Who knows? Maybe he'll mention it, broach the subject, and talk about it. But who knows? Maybe that'll be too late as well. You never know what's going to happen. How many times does President Nelson have to be right? And it never seems to pan out the way we expect, right? He institutes all these things. And then it's after the fact when something happens and we all look back and go, oh.
It makes perfect sense.
There you go. Now I can see exactly why he said to do this. How many times does it have to happen before we go, wait a minute, I need to make sure I'm on the front foot here, on the right side.
It's happened enough for us to have faith in him.
Yeah. So again, brothers and sisters, we love you all so much and we're so grateful that we can share these things with you. We love making these videos, and again, we only come from a place of humility. Forgive our jokes and our levity about these things. We don't mean any offense. We understand that everyone has different circumstances. Our only hope and goal here is to let you know that we show you how we got to the conclusion that we want to follow the prophet, and to help you maybe to help strengthen your testimony, and also maybe come to that conclusion yourself. But again, everyone is different. Pray, ponder, follow the prophet. Is that it?
Follow the prophet, he knows the way. I'm out of tune, but follow the prophet, he knows the way. Follow him and you won't go astray. So we leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.